Hey guys, this is Ash and you're watching WriterGAsh. So today I'm doing my OlympicsAthon, the Winter OlympicsAthon, and February wrap-up. So the Winter OlympicsAthon was this readathon I participated in this month, which had certain prompts I had to follow from the books I read. And if you're wondering what kind of prompts they were, check out the card above for my TBR. And yeah, there were some changes from my original TBR, but you'll see that in the wrap-up. So there were 5 main prompts based on the 5 rings of the Olympics. First being winter, since this is a winter Olympic, and I had to read a book set in winter. I read Emerald Green. There was one chapter that was set during Christmas time when Gwen had traveled back and passed. That doesn't give you any spoilers, but just letting you know, there was a winter scene. A quick December scene. Anyway, so Emerald Green is the 3rd book in the Precious Stones series, and the first book of it being Ruby Red. So this is originally a German book, has been translated into English, and I read the entire series again. I read these when I was like 14, 15 the first time, and I just reread them. And it's an okay book. I enjoyed it again, and yeah. I definitely would recommend it, especially for younger readers. This is really a YA read. So if you're a younger reader, definitely pick up this book. It's a fantastical world. So Gwyneth is a time traveler basically. And how this world of time traveling works is that there's a gene that some people have that allows them to travel back in time. And so Gwyneth or Gwendolyn, because in the German edition her name is Gwendolyn. In the English one it's Gwyneth for some reason. I kind of like Gwendolyn better. Anyway, and Gideon, the male time traveler. So there are 2 lines, the male line and the female line. And every few generations we get a new male and a female time traveler. So Gideon is this generation's time traveler, and Gwyneth, who had no idea she could even be one, because you have to be born on a particular day because Isaac Newton said so, and her mother lied about her date of birth for her entire life, and she turns out to be the time traveler in the family, and thus begins an adventure. There's just a lot of secrets that come forward throughout the series, and it's just definitely a fun read, I would say. Give it a shot. It's a 3-book series, Ruby Red, Sapphire Blue, and Emerald Green. I read all 3. I'll talk more about why I read the other 2 books, because Emerald Green was for winter. Anyway, the next would be host. So I had to read a book relating to the host country, which this year was China, and I read Love Boat Taipei. It's a young adult romance about this Chinese American girl who is being sent to China for the summer so she can learn about her culture, her home, and actually learn some Chinese. And she meets people at this place, and they refer to this place called as Love Boat because a lot of the program attendees have found their partners through this program. And just what's it called? It's just a young adult romance. I enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite book. It had a trope that I really dislike, and I mean, it's visible from the very beginning of the book, so it's not a spoiler when I say it, but one of the trope was the guy had a girlfriend who, there isn't any explicit cheating, but the fact that he had a girlfriend at the start of the book just doesn't sit well with me. The next is sport, and I read Just This Once for this one. So this is about an American marketing exec who goes on vacation in New Zealand and meets a rugby player when she's there. And it's just an adult romance, I guess. It was fine. I gave it maybe a 2.5, 3 stars. I read it because I had to read a book set in Australia, so. And I think part of the reason I didn't like it much is because of, God, this book was so heavy-handed about gender roles, and it's just, I don't know, it wasn't even straight up gender roles, but it felt like it was gender roles. like the trope where I'm not like other girls trope, or I don't realize how great I am trope. I am tired. I'm not a child anymore. I do not enjoy that stuff. Anyway, it's an adult book where it literally uses every trope as a kid that I never really saw an issue with, but now I just can't read anymore. Especially the I'm not like other girls trope. That's just not for me. Or like she's not like other girls trope. Like this guy is a player, but it's so nice that she isn't kind of trope. Okay. Anyway, I also am not a big sports romance fan, so maybe that had a thing to do with it, but it wasn't sports heavy. It just, I think it's the I'm not like other girls thing I couldn't get past. So the next one is Paralympics, and for that one I went with The Bright Test. The Bright Test is about this girl who comes to America because this guy's mother went to Vietnam to find him a bride because he has never really dated anyone, and I guess she just wanted her son to have someone. And the main protagonist has autism, and he struggles with displaying emotions in a conventional way, and he believes that he cannot love people because he didn't feel pain when he lost his best friend and cousin. But like, this book is about him realizing that what he feels is valid and that he actually does feel things. He just manifests his feelings in a different way. And it's just really interesting seeing him come to terms with the whole like himself and who he is. And he has a really good support system. His family loves him and cherishes him as he is. His mother can be a bit overbearing sometimes, and I'm not sure how much I like that. But his brother is just such a supportive character. What I would have liked in this book is for the female protagonist to have a support system as well. Like, she leaves Vietnam to move to a different country, and yes, she goes to like school when she's here, like learns English, all of that, but she never really forms a support system that's just hers. I've come to realize that like the older I get, I really appreciate when both parties have their own separate support systems, because everyone needs friends that are looking out for their best interest and are not just invested in the relationship. And yeah, that's the one thing I wish would have been a thing in this book. And then the last main prompt was country, which is your host country. For that, I read one of the books in this anthology. So this is The Adventures of Feluda by Satyajit Ray. This is the second book, and it is also a translation from Bangla to English. While Bangla is my native language, I do not read it. And this is one of my favorite Bengali stories. And these anthologies are the only ways I can read it. So for this one, I read The House of Death, which is it's a mystery novel. It is a story like Feluda stories I grew up on, basically. My parents would read me books in Bengali because I couldn't, and they were just a very integral part of my childhood. So this was a great, read. Anyway, so there were also bonus prompts, and in the bonus prompts, you were supposed to, the first bonus prompt was to read 5 books set in 5 different continents. And then, obviously, I picked Ruby Red for Europe, since this is set in London. I picked The Bright Test for the North America, because this is set in the US. I picked, which one did I pick? I picked Criminals of Kathmandu for Asia, because it's set in Nepal and in India. And I picked Shipped, which is a book I have read before and I really enjoy, for South America, because it's set in the Galapagos Islands. In that area, they're on a cruise. And then finally, I picked Just This Once, the book I didn't really like, for Australia/Oceania, because it's set in New Zealand. Next is Flag, which includes a book that has 5 colors on the cover. Here's the cover, and as you can see, there are 5 colors on it. 5 colors of the Olympics, I mean. There's blue, there's yellow, there's red, there's green, and there's black. Next is medal. For this one, I went with House of Earth and Blood / Sky and Breath because both of those are foiled. I have the tour edition of Sky and Breath, which I don't have physically on me right now. For medal, you have to pick a book with foiling on the cover, and the tour edition literally is just foiling on the cover. And finally, I had to read 5 translated books. And this is where all the Feluda books and the Ruby Red books come in. So for Feluda, I read 2 of the books in this anthology. I read The House of Death and Criminals in Kathmandu. And those were the 2 translated from Bangla to English. For the other 3, I did Ruby Red, Sapphire Blue, and Emerald Green. I read them as ebooks, and I only owned Ruby Red as physical. I've ordered the other ones, which will be here at some point. But yeah, and so far that's what I have read this month. So now that we've talked about all the books I read, I want to talk about House of Earth and Blood and Sky and Breath. I'm not going into spoilers, but since I read that for the medal prompt, I never really talked about what the books were about. So House of Earth and Blood is Sarah J. Maas's first adult book. And it is set in a more urban fantasy realm, but still high fantasy because it's not in our world. I think that's how I define my high fantasy versus urban fantasy. But it's more of a modern world, and we still have the fae we love, but there's also shifters, there is witches, there is mermaids. And it's a really, really interesting universe she's created. And we have Bryce Quinlan. And she is a badass. I think she's one of Sarah J. Maas's first characters who is a main characters who isn't like the skinny prototype of a fae, right? And like, there's a whole point why like she wants to be a dancer, but she can't because she's curvier. Anyway, that's beside the point. Anyway, so I just freaking love the badass character of Bryce Quinlan. So the beginning of the book, Bryce is definitely a party girl who goes out with her friends and makes really dumb choices, gets high, gets drunk, and something happens, which, I mean, I'm sure the actual blurb of the book even mentions it, but I'm not sure if I want to because it's still like a hard-hitting moment. But something happened that flips her life upside down, and while she still portrays herself as this carefree, I don't give a shit about anything in my life kind of person, it hits her hard, and she reevaluates a lot of things about her life. And now she has to work with this angel, hunt Athalar, and find out who's been killing all of these people. And it's just a really good mystery. It's forced proximity, slightly enemies to lovers, and it is just a fantastic book. And book 2 picks up a few months after book 1 ends. There is implications of the ends of book 1 that gets dealt with in book 2, and then book 2 blew my mind. Both of these books are undoubtedly 5 stars. When I first read Crescent City though, it took me a while. Like, I started reading it, like, I don't even know when. And then I stopped reading after maybe like 50 to 100 pages because I just wasn't getting into it, because there's a lot of world building, because she's building a whole new world from the ground up. But I think it takes a bit of like paying attention and maybe looking up certain things. I always run to the Wikia when I'm confused, like, what are the houses? There's House of Sky and Bread, there's House of Earth and Blood, there's House of Flame and something, I don't even remember, and then House of Many Waters. So understanding who's in what house, connecting all of these like dots, I think those were really important things to do. And just knowing who the characters are, the Wikipedia personally helped me with that. I tried not to look much into the people's pages, so I'll just look up like their house and that's it. And sometimes the Wikia helps me imagine the person like visually, although I have a very set picture of Bryce in my head that the Wikia doesn't really have an influence on. Anyway, so I think that really helped me get back into the book once I started like establishing what the world was like in my head, it made more sense for me to move forward. That I feel like once you were like a little bit of the way in, you were a goner. Sarah J. Maas did it again, like created a badass bitch. I can only hope that Roy stays badass throughout the rest of the series and doesn't lose what she is. Alright, so after the Winter OlympicsAthon, I still managed to get in 2 more books into the month of February, and technically 3 if I've managed to finish the one I'm reading right now by the end of the night, and it's only 9:30, so it's very much so possible. And if I do, I might film a quick thing for me to stitch in later. So that's, keep your eye out for that. Anyway, so the next book I read was The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. And it was a book about this woman that gets jolted at the altar. Am I using that word right? I've heard the word before, but I'm not really sure like if I'm using it right. Anyway, so she gets left at the altar by her fiance, and his brother is the one that breaks the news to her, and she believes, because the brother tells the, well, so the fiance sends the brother a text saying, "You helped me realize that I shouldn't be getting married today," basically. And she sees the text and she hates the brother. Fast forward 3 years, she's now having to work with him to get her dream job. And this book kind of just follows their new dynamic and kind of addresses the things that happened in the past, them moving on as friends, and more. And really, I think it was a great book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was a second chance romance, Ever After Always. It is technically a third in the book, third in the series, but I don't think I'll be reading the first 2 necessarily. Maybe if I'm ever like not finding material to read, I might come back to it, but right now it's not on my TBR. Anyway, so this book was by Chloe Lacey, and I gave it a 3 star. It wasn't the best, it's not the worst. Anyway, so this book is about a woman that basically tells her husband that she needs space and their relationship isn't what it used to be, and she needs a break from him, basically. And he says, "I'm gonna fight for us." Their relationship has become cold and she hasn't been feeling appreciated, and she's finally open about it. And it's about them working on their marriage. They have a marriage counselor, and it's just really, it points out how important it is to find support in a relationship is constant work, and you really have to put in the effort for it to succeed. So that is it for my February/Winter OlympicsAthon wrap up, and I will see you in my March TBR because I've got a really, really exciting readathon coming in March.